I don't want to hear anything in these here comments about how Barca played today. Like I said on the pod, the whole point of October is to make it out intact and get the job done. This being the first match back from international break, all those injuries that Barcelona sustained, some rotation was done today, as well as getting the 3 points against Mallorca on the road, I'd say that Xavi did just that. He got the job done. Look at the lineup. No Pedri, no Eric Garcia, Piqué and Alba starting for the first time together, and Ansu's first La Liga start. And to be honest, Piqué for Garcia in hindsight was definitely the right choice. Piqué was great in the air against Mallorca, and that made a ton of sense for Xavi to make that move. And while it did seem on paper like Xavi took a lot of chances, look at the players that were available. He really didn't. He kind of did play it as safe as possible, if you will, for this kind of matchup. If I were him, I would have got a bit fancy. Starting Louis and Piqué and Christensen in a 3-5-2 at the back just to start the match, for the first 2 minutes. And if you concede in the first 2 minutes, regardless of the lineup, you were always going to concede in the first 2 minutes. I say that a bit in jest, but I think it would have been pretty funny to see Mallorca be a bit discombobulated for 2 minutes, and then Barcelona get back into their regular lineup. And I do say all that in jest, because just like you, I did want there to be a bit of fun in this match. It really just was about survival. That said, with survival the name of the game, let's get into it. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 1-0 win over Mallorca. One is it won't be the first time. Well, I'm not actually sure it's even the first time already. It's probably the second or third time that Lewandowski has done this, but it won't be the first time that Luis saves Barcelona, and it certainly won't be the last time either. For Barcelona, this match was going to be ugly from minute 1 all the way to minute 92 and 93, and they had to get through that initial slog. I looked up the word. It actually just means when you're kind of slowing down and jogging. It's not an official word, but slog is definitely how I would describe the first 25 minutes of that game prior to the goal happening. It was just a lot of the ball being kicked around, a lot of punting, a lot of not even playing out of the back for possession for Barcelona for possession's sake. And yet, Lewandowski kind of out of nothing. There was a bit of a lull, scores the first goal, and decides this entire match in just one single moment. Luis supporting Ansu on the wing. Ansu has a pretty good fake and a pass in between 2 defenders with Lewandowski moving into the space and behind. Then it was all about the number 9, cuts back and just fires it to the far post. Beautiful goal, beautiful individual goal by Lewandowski. The kind of goal too that takes pressure off a team. And that was what I've said from the very start, and I'll keep saying it all season long. The one thing that Lewandowski does is score goals, yes, but I think more importantly for the psychological aspects of this team, it allows them to trust in one figurehead. It's the same thing that this team did to Messi, but the difference is they put the build-up and the execution on Messi, meaning he had to create them and finish them. For Lewandowski, they just have this institutional trust that this guy is going to come up and score the goals I need him to, and so far, he's done just that. These are the goals that just get you enough points, as I keep saying, to survive in the Liga throughout the campaign. And a little bit of history too. With that goal, he becomes the first player to score 8 in his first 7 La Liga games since 1996 when Christian Vieira did it for Atletico Madrid. And that stat, of course, courtesy of Mr. Chip on Twitter, who I always say, gotta give that guy a follow. 2 is that the right side was a trip, and it's not a good trip. Trip doesn't necessarily mean vacation. It's kind of just one of those grinds to the grocery store where you're standing in the aisle, can't figure out what you came to the store for at all, and then you wind up why you made the trip at all. That's kind of what the right side of Barcelona felt like today between Kessié, Dembélé, and Balde at right back, and 3 different players all kind of had what I would consider less than stellar performances for 3 very different reasons. Kessié is the one that I start with because he's the one that kind of concerns me. Because that right interior spot is the one that, I thought that he'd be battling for Gavi. Instead, Gavi moves over to the left interior spot and still plays better than Kessié. Gavi showing you why he's starting over the new midfielder. Now, I did say on the last pod, and while I'm so forgiving to Ferran Torres and other players who come in, I kind of have to be patient with Kessié too. I know there was some big expectations for him coming in from AC Milan. He just won Serie A, and I think he's comfortable knowing who he is at 25. But it seems like it's going to take him a little time to get used to Xavi's system and his instructions, because there were times, especially in the first 25 minutes, where he would either be too high to set up a move, and then there seemed to be this huge gap between the backline and the forwards, and then there were times when he'd drop in too deep, then he wouldn't make that run through the midfield for Busquets or one of those center backs to find him. He wasn't really hitting any 1-2 with any players because his spacing was kind of all over the place, so you didn't really see him supporting in any of those triangles that we usually would see. Now again, it's not all on Kessié because that right side was kind of a mess, but for Kessié, unfortunately, it's not a performance that fills you as much confidence. Next up is, of course, Balde at the right back spot, and going back into my memory bank, I think for what I've known for Balde for the last 5-6 years, I mean, this is again going back to when he was basically a preteen. I know he was a center forward when he was really, really little, and then he was a left winger, moving back to left back, and to my knowledge, he has never played on the right side. There was probably one random game some point when he was a U14 or something, or U15, but not since I have known of Alejandro Balde has he ever played at the right back spot. So it's pretty incredible that Xavi's just going to say, hey, you're a starting left back, and that's kind of where this is, right? To say you're our starting left back, so instead of trusting Marcos Alonso or Sergio Roberto, risking him, we saw him come on for the last 10 minutes. You know that that's what Xavi wanted to from the beginning, which makes sense. Sergio Roberto is a right back, Alejandro Balde is a left back, and yet Balde, instead of even Alba, was tasked with being on the right side. And it didn't work. He wasn't making the overlapping runs. It seemed like every first touch would bring him backwards because he would take that touch with his left foot and not his right. And I don't blame Balde for this. Again, he was playing completely out of position, and he did just enough. But it was kind of shutting down everything that Dembele wanted to do. And you know, in the case of Dembele, a lot of it goes on the fact that Balde was playing on the right. It's hard to fault Dembele when he's running into definitely a double team at all times. Sometimes it was also triple when that third man came. That said, Dembele, there are those games that I always mention that he didn't really bring his best, and this game from the very start, before I even saw that it was going to be consistent double teams, it felt like Dembele did not have his A game. And part of why I say it's not his A game, because I don't think defensively Dembele was particularly great today either. It wasn't bad. Like, same with Balde. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't necessarily bad. I think Kessié was kind of in the camp of bad. But Dembele and Balde, they were just fine on that right side. But certainly that is not where Barcelona was going to get a victory today. And they were kind of having to hope the rest of their teammates were picking up the slack. 3 is yellows out of hand. Kind of dictated this match. I know Mallorca is yellow and red, and I think yellow, and thankfully red was not one of the colors here, but yellow was certainly the primary color for this match, especially in that end of that first half where the match got away from the referee. There were 4 yellows handed out in 6 minutes, which tells you a little bit more, I think, about the way the game is going, the way the game has been played, and unfortunately is likely going to be played in the second half. And I think the official probably got a few wrong in just a short amount of time. It's a makeup call. I think both teams are going to feel aggrieved. And the good news is, not to say good news, because you're going to see suspensions later down the line because of a match like this, which is unfortunate. Even Busi picking up a yellow there in the second half that he probably shouldn't have. But over the course of a season, yeah, these yellows are going to sting. But for this match alone, thankfully, it was not decided by the yellows. We saw Christensen get one. It was an unnecessary yellow, but fully deserved. He left a boot in late. Then Piqué gets a yellow right after Gabi gets brought down. And I was kind of wondering at that point, is being physical with Gabi the game plan against him? Because it doesn't really work, and I'm fine with that. There was a yellow on Juan Costa a few minutes later. That felt like a bit of a makeup call for what should have been a yellow for Gabi's foul, and then Piqué gets it instead. Then Kessié 2 minutes later, that was more than deserved on the pullback. And it was well done by Piqué and Christensen, by the way, though, getting those first half yellows and then being completely composed, putting out all the fires in the second half, and not committing any unnecessary errors that could complicate the match for Barcelona. And as I said, those yellows kind of did sum up the match. And Barcelona winning this one 1-0, I want to remind you, too, that 0 in that 1-0 is kind of more important because Barca did have the 1 than a 2-0 would be. So I am totally fine with that back line. Almost proud of the fact that that back line loses Koundé, doesn't really have a fully healthy Roberto, doesn't have Hector Bellerin, doesn't have Ronald Araujo, and yet they were able to get a clean sheet in a match that they did not play well in. Because that is headline 4. You had to keep the clean sheet. Don't forget, Marc-Andre ter Stegen picks up another clean sheet this season. And there were those moments in this game when Barca had the majority of possession, and yet their goalkeeper had to bail them out at certain times. You had Ruiz de la Galarreta on that corner attempt in the first half. Barcelona had to get that one right. And then it's a mistake by Balde being late coming from the right. It doesn't grab the runner, so an open shot on goal for Juan Costa. Ter Stegen somehow shuts that one down. And then there were some late chances from Mallorca too, after their 2 chances to start the second half. We're talking late in the last 5-10 minutes. Barcelona were having trouble getting the ball out of goal kick situations, and the final one from Kang and Lee in the last 2 minutes, I mean, again, Ter Stegen's positioning just had to be right, and it was an A-plus performance from Marc-Andre ter Stegen, because he was cool, calm, and I mean, there was no moment that the ball was close to slipping by him. He had it. He had this whole match under control. And headline number 5 is 1 October match at a time. A reminder that I know this game was kind of ugly. Even this match review, you're like, what am I really here for? They scored 1 good goal. Lewandowski scored a wonder goal. Got in, got out. I mean, who really cares about the rest of it? Totally agree. It was an ugly, ugly match. But it's all about survival in the month of October. You can only play the next one. It's Xavi's job to play out the month, and this rotation and most of this game was based on the entire month, not just this match against Mallorca. Heading into Inter, I expect Pedri, of course, to start, probably Eric Garcia coming back in, and I wouldn't be too surprised if we see Christensen on the right, which is something I'll likely get into in the match preview, which will be out in a few days. As I said, this back line is beat up. They were coming back from the international break, fever virus, and all of that, and Barcelona probably could have taken a draw in this one, but instead, they get the 3 points and they march on to the next one in the month of October. They get the clean sheet, and now that's 1 match down and 8 to go, and there's a good argument that this was the easiest, on paper, of the 9 this month. All 8 remaining could, in theory, on paper, as I said, be harder than this one. And because there isn't much time to regroup, this is where I leave you, because I'll see you soon. And until then, Forza Barça.